What's going on, guys? I'm back at it again for the very first time, I guess, with Jared the Grappler's Guide to MMA. I'm going to be starting off this series with my fighting style archetypes explained. For part one, we're going to be doing the wrestling Venn diagram. You guys remember in like middle school when they're showing you about Venn diagrams and it's like this overlaps with this, but there's commonalities in the middle and there's differences. Like, we're going to be doing that with the ways that you could approach wrestling for the sake of a fight. So to introduce you to all of it, briefly, we have sprawl and brawl, which is, they're trying to keep it on the fight. Slam with no plan, or I'm also going to call it slam was the plan, where they're just trying to slam you just for the sake of slamming you. Wall and stall, they want to push you into the fence. And lay and pray, they want to lay on you, on Leon Edwards. Right? But anyway, sprawl and brawl, these guys are not just strikers. So you might hear, okay, they want to keep it on the feet. Why isn't Conor McGregor a sprawl and brawl fighter? Because he doesn't have wrestler style striking. A sprawl and brawl fighter is still a wrestler because they are using their wrestling skills where if they do get taken down by somebody with better ground grappling than them, they can get back to the feet. They have the ability to prevent the takedown from happening at all. And because you acknowledge that this person is good at wrestling, every time they level change where they might be looking for a body jab, they might just be trying to see your reactions and stuff like that, you're going to be hesitating because you're thinking, man, what if Tyron Woodley takes me down? And all of a sudden, Tyron Woodley lands an overhand that knocks you out. You understand? So it needs to be a very specific type of style in order for me to be all like, yeah, this is sprawl and brawl. But once they start implementing the different looks, where even if they're not shooting takedowns to keep you respecting them, you still have it in the back of their mind because of their stance, because they're kind of lowering themselves a little bit and they could grab your leg or whatever. You have to be conscientious enough of the possibility of this Division I wrestler shooting a takedown that it opens up the ability for them to do some stuff that isn't good striking habits necessarily, right? A lot of people associate this with exciting fights, which is fair, but this is an archetypes video, not a stereotypes video, so it's not necessarily that. If depending on the activity level, you might have Tyron Woodley, who's not very active, still a great fighter, but he's just not very active, and then Justin Gaethje, who does not stop throwing punches, and they're both sprawl and brawl fighters. This is not about excitement, it's about, are they using wrestler striking, right? Slam with no plan is going to be the next category here, which is, I'm also going to be calling it slam was the plan, because in calling it slam with no plan, it's kind of perpetuating the stereotype, like these guys that just want to slam you have absolutely no fight IQ whatsoever. Like, think of like how everybody was like dogging on Chandler for, oh, let me just pistol squat Dustin Poirier for no reason just to slam him. Like, slams aren't always a idiotic idea, because like if you think about it, a punch has the power to hit with one person's body weight behind it. If I punch you in the face, I hit you with my body weight. If I pick you up and then I jump in such a way where your face hits the ground, we used my body weight, your body weight, and all of the muscular force accelerating at the ground to hit you. So I could be hitting with, upwards of two people's body weight by picking you up and slamming you on the canvas. And we've seen some of the scariest knockouts in UFC history with, slams being involved, So I just want you guys to keep that in mind. It's not always a dumb idea just because I'm calling it slam with no plan, but I feel like it's associated with it being a dumb idea to try to beat people by slamming them. Which is why it's not very common, because it is hard to do. These are trained fighters. They're not just going to let you pick them up. But their way of winning fights is demoralizing people using takedowns, using pressure. An example is Merab Dvalishvili. He doesn't necessarily knock people out with his takedowns, but the pressure is the other part of it, where it's like, I might take you down just because as I take you down, you're going to try to get back up. And because you're focused on getting back up, I could punch you a couple times in the transition and you'll get more tired than I am because I'm the one controlling the action. Right? So don't think of it like, oh, they have to knock everybody out with takedowns, so nobody's ever done that, so this style doesn't really exist. Anybody who uses the idea of takedowns as a weapon, not just as a way of let me bring the fight to the ground so that I could submit you, so that I could use my lay and pray, so that I could whatever, if they are using the takedowns as a weapon, that's what I'm considering slam was the plan, Slam with no plan is like if they have poor IQ, if they have good fight IQ, it's slam was the plan. Wall and stall, however, It's like a Mario Batista type of fighter, right? Where they just kind of want to push you into the wall and hug you and make it a boring fight. Like Mario Batista, and I'm just messing around. Mario Batista doesn't even fight that way, but like he had one boring fight with Jose Aldo, and everybody wants to act like he's the most boring fighter of all time. So it's just kind of funny. But like Khabib is probably a good example, even though he also has good lay and pray. Let me clarify. But the wall install type of fighters are pretty much just good at using the wall as its own martial art. So like if you were to go into a non-MMA wrestling program, they might have padded walls for the sake of keeping it safe, but you don't use them. You don't learn how to use them. The wall is something that's very unique as a martial art to MMA. So like to kind of digress for a second, a lot of people talk about, oh, MMA is mixed martial arts, so it can't be its own martial art. It literally means that you mixed multiple martial arts. What martial art teaches how to use the wall, right? None of them do except MMA. So that's why I consider MMA its own martial art. And the wall install fighters are the ones who have mastered that. Their win condition is going to be wall control time. They want to push you into the wall, keep you there. They could be dealing damage there with punches, knees, elbows, or they could just be stinking it up, Mario Batista style. You don't know. But it's a valid way of winning fights. And then lastly, we got lay and pray. It's probably going to piss some people off that I chose to use GSP there. Oh, GSP could do it at all. He could strike, he could submit, he could do it all. Well, he's not a wall install fighter, because how many people was he just pushing into the fence and stinking it up with? You know what I mean? Like, he had that skill set, but he mainly wanted to keep you on the ground in the center of the octagon, right? He wasn't a sprawl and brawl fighter, because although he was a great striker, it wasn't wrestler-style striking where it's like, yeah, let me just feint the double leg and knock you out. Like, he was winning fights on the feet by picking you apart, which is not sprawl and brawl anymore. You know what I mean? That's a different style altogether. They're wrongfully associated with boring fights. I think you could be an exciting lay and pray fighter, okay? Which is why I kind of included this like Pokemon evolution bullet point, where it's like hit and submit. So you take your Charmeleon and then it turns into a Charmander and then it turns into a Charizard. You know what I mean? You take a lay and pray fighter and you give them enough skill points or whatever, they evolve into a hit and submit fighter where they take you down, they ground and pound you, and they look for a finish, right? But now let's go into the actual Venn diagram here so it can kind of better illustrate why I'm calling it the wrestling Venn diagram, right? You have some fighters like Ben Askren who might be pure lay and pray. You have some fighters like Khabib that combine lay and pray and wall install. Kamaru Usman, he doesn't really win fights on the ground. He might take people down, but, you know, he's really mainly pushing people into the wall and stinking it up when he decides to use his wrestling. He doesn't really sprawl and brawl because his striking is more technical. Am I making sense? I could go into all the justifications for these fighters, but it's really just to get you thinking like, okay, some fighters might be multiple things. Some fighters might be just one thing. Some fighters could be classified in the same vein for different reasons. This is just trying to encourage people to think that wrestling is more than just let me take you down and hug your legs. Wrestling could be the defensive part of it, the same way how boxing is, yes, punching people, but it's also defense. You know, Justin Gaethje shows great MMA wrestling, and people will be all like, oh, dude, I wish Justin Gaethje would use his wrestling. He might be a way better fighter. But, like, what if he's not good at taking people down and controlling them just because he wrestled in college? What if he was the type of wrestler that would keep it close in the first period, and then the next one he'd choose bottom, hit and escape, and just win? But you know what I mean? You don't know how his style was. So all these people saying, he never uses his wrestling. He might already be using his wrestling to where his strengths follow. He might have the best takedown defense, the best scrambles to avoid being controlled. Same with Yoel Romero. Oh, he's an Olympian. He could have been champion if he just uses wrestling. And then do what? Because he doesn't have a BJJ background. And freestyle wrestling doesn't spend a lot of time working on, you know, the ground control and stuff like American wrestlers do. That's why most of these wrestlers that we see dominating are either the Russian cats who did Sambo as their like regional wrestling style to add on to the freestyle wrestling, or they're these Americans that literally you get rewarded for preventing escapes for long enough and for dominating them and getting back points and stuff. You don't do that in freestyle. You just kind of take people down, and then the person stalls for a couple seconds, and they get stood back up. So Yoel Romero had great takedowns and great takedown defense. So he used his wrestling. He would go out there, sprawl and brawl, and then when he saw an opening, he would use the slam was the plan, game plan, to slam you, punch you for a couple seconds while you're regaining your bearings, and he's not going to go and get reversed and submitted by Jacare Souza or something. No, he's going to go out there and fight to his advantages. So I'm tired of people saying, oh, this dude doesn't use his wrestling. It's like, no, wrestling is just more than what you think it is. This is my assessment of the wrestling fighting style. Maybe I'll do some more of these in the future depending on how this goes, but look forward to seeing this on TikTok and YouTube. Thank you. This is Jared, the Grappler's Guide to MMA.